Jessica just comes in from her vacation on her honeymoon, and what were you doing on your honeymoon?
I did my first 14er on my honeymoon, and it was interesting enough for me because it was the mountain that's on the Coors Light bottle or can.
Oh.
What? Get out of here!
Yeah, it's called Wilson's Peak, and we got a guide for some activities over the week. I was on vacation for about 3 weeks. And he was like, "Do you guys want to climb this mountain that's like on the Coors Light can? Everyone that comes here does it. It's like a thing." And I was like, "Yeah," just to say that I've done that. That'd be cool. And then he was like, "It's a 14er though. We got to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning." And I was like, at that point, I'm like, "What's a 14er? Sign me up."
Yeah.
But yeah, it was we had to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. The thing you have to be mindful of are thunderstorms. You do not want to be above the tree line when a thunderstorm rolls through because it's like a 1 in 10 chance that you'll be struck by lightning if you are above the tree line because you're the only, all it is you and rocks, right? So you are more attractive than hitting a rock to a lightning bolt. So
there's nothing that grows up there. Yeah, just rocks.
Exactly. Nothing at all. So on the climb we did, there was still some snow, so we had to wear crampons, which you attach to the bottom of your shoes, and they're just like spikes that go into the snow, and we had to do some pickaxe training as well, and we were tied to each other at certain times. The very top of the mountain was like a class 4 technical rock climb, which I wasn't very prepared for, but it was exhilarating. And yeah, it took us it was 14 miles total. And it took us, I don't know, like 13 hours to do. And it sucked, though, because, like, you're walking for so long, right? And you have these packs. You know, you have to pack your crampons, your ice picks, your food, everything. And then we get up to the top of the mountain, finally. Like, this whole time, all you're thinking of, I mean, you stop talking after the first 2 hours because you're like, oh, my God, this really sucks. I don't want to say anything. It really sucks. And you're just, like, following the guide, and then you get up to this mountain finally after 7 hours, and then it started snowing, and the clouds come in right when we got to the very top, and the guide was like, "Okay, hurry, take a picture," and then we immediately turned around. It was like we were up on the top for maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Wow.
We had to turn around because the clouds were coming in, so it was just like, as we turned around, I was just like, I can't believe we just summited that for 2 minutes, and now we're doing that. No break, nothing. So we broke when we finally got back to the tree line, but I mean, it's cool. It's an accomplishment, right? It's like
yeah. Well, you know, when the silver bullet train is coming, you got to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Now, do you find yourself ordering Coors Light and pointing at the can, just saying, "Would anyone like to know about this?"
So when we got back down to the mountain, we went to the gas station and we ordered some Coors Light. But we're still, I mean, Telluride is still pretty high. You're still at, I think the town itself is still at 9,000 feet. So anything we didn't drink very much. We drank it took us like a whole 2 weeks to kill a bottle of wine. We didn't finish our beer. We drank like a sip of it, and then we went home and we slept for 15 hours straight.
Coors Light does that to me too.
I thought Coors Light was water. I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, if you live out there and then you come down to sea level and you drink and you think, why is this having no effect? Because you've gotten used to the lower oxygen content, and we used to live in the Denver area at like a mile high, and we'd come back here, and a couple of beers, you wouldn't even know you'd been drinking anything.
You probably feel like Superman at that point.
Yeah, but if you go up to like Winter Park, which is 9,000 feet, you have a glass of anything, and you're on the verge of getting smashed just because you're not used to the altitude.
So in order to cut costs, our next employee adventure will be at the top of a mountain. We'll bring you one case of wine and
take the whole week.
That sounds awesome.
It's addicting. There are people there that want to climb all the 14ers in the Rocky Mountains, and it looks like somebody here alone that's it looks Scott Kelly. He's done 7 14ers.
Nice.
It's a big It's a big deal. People seek these out and get to the top and summit them. Got to be in good shape.
Yeah, unsubscribe. Unsubscribe. Unsubscribe.
Yeah, you're not interested, huh?
Nope. I will take a pass. I'll stay here and answer replication questions. That's how much I. No, I like ski lodges and stuff like that, like sitting and watching, but just not exerting myself. I don't like exerting myself at sea level, much less climbing. Although movies about climbing are kind of cool. But
Yeah.
Especially, alive.
yeah.
I guess technically it's not a climbing movie, but
Yeah.
Didn't they make a movie recently about Everest?
A couple.
it did
Yeah, pretty recent.
just in the last year or so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotta watch
If-
this too.
I would watch 14 of those, but climbing a 14er? No. Watch that 14 times. Oh, I guess we could start answering questions.
Oh, let's see here. Everything's about hiking. Come on, guys. Like I was going to turn to SQL Server now. Replication. That's the first SQL question I see. All right. Trizzel has a question. He or she says, I have a snapshot replication that runs once a day, but it is running all the time. Is it possible to run it on the scheduled time, on the scheduled time, only not the whole time because it is blocking when it runs all the time? Blah, blah, blah.
Sounds like a big snapshot.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's probably a growing, bigger and bigger kind of deal. Snapshot replication, you're pushing the whole thing across. Do you really want to take snapshots all that often, or do you maybe want to just incrementally push across smaller objects? What I would ask is, how big is that table, and is it time to start doing something other than snapshot replication? Kara, have you ever used snapshot replication for anything?
I have not. Our requirements have always been close to real-time replication, so we've always used transactional replication. Anytime where we could have a 24-hour delay in data, we just use backup and restore instead of snapshot replication.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's dependent upon your technologies and database size, how you're going to get that backup and restore done. But I think you're right about the snapshot replication. It's the size, and it's the blocking that occurs when it has to do, I believe it's a schema lock, to make sure that the schema hasn't changed.
The only time I've ever seen it make sense, and I've never used it, I've just heard other people talking about it, is when you have a ginormous database, but you only have like one tiny table or a couple tiny tables that you want to replicate out somewhere, and so it's quick to take the snapshot. But as soon as that starts growing to any percentage or size of the database, then you got to start doing some change management.
Yeah.
Right. Question from Justin. He says, for someone who doesn't want to create the query, does anyone know of a good site that has queries to decimate TempDB?
Decimate. I have to go to Google real quick.
I like data.stackexchange.com. Data.stackexchange.com has all kinds of crappy queries on it that are written against the Stack Overflow database. The problem is you actually have to have the Stack Overflow database. The funny part is that Eric and I write queries like this all the time because we're always trying to break stuff. So what I would do is create a table that only has 2 fields in it. It has like an identity key, and then it also has a care 6000 field. Or some people say char, some people say care. I say care because I'm a caring kind of guy. So like a care 6000 field, which means it's going to take a whole page, a whole 8K page, to store every single record you put into there. And then just do selects from system tables like sys all columns or sys all objects, and just insert stuff into there. You don't even have to fill that care 6000 with anything. Just put like your name in there, and it's going to take a whole page to store every object. Man, you can dump a buttload of TempDB into there super fast, and then just run it from a whole lot of sections, or cross-join sys all columns to itself in order to produce a buttload of records. You can knock a server over pretty fast with that.
Or just have a business user run a query. That's what we had at my last job. There was a query that took a 0.5 terabyte of TempDB space. 0.5 terabyte.
Nice.
Damn, people.
That's more than
sorry.
decimating. That might be like centimating or millimating it.
Yeah, we got an alert that the TempDB mount point was running out of space, and I was the on-call DBA, so I took a look and checked who was active and what was running, and it was just like this massive query. They're querying all the data in the world.
Who does this stuff?
Career limiting query.
Yeah.
End users, that's who does it.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Question from Joe O'Connor. He says, have you ever encountered a situation where 2 records inserted into a table get the same identity back? Our developer is claiming that this has happened, but I thought they were supposed to be unique.
How are they querying it? Is it added identity? What are they using to query it?
Yeah, there are bugs where add identity returns someone else's identity. You want to use, if I remember right, it's scope identity, right?
Yes.
Scope identity.
Scope identity.
Yeah.
Add scope identity, because you could be like if there's a trigger.
No add. Just scope underscore identity, and it might be print, open paren, close paren.
That's it. Especially because if you have like triggers that are firing, you can get the wrong identity, like the identity that happened from the trigger too.
Yeah. I'm not even too sure why they use added identity if it doesn't produce the right result all the time. Just get rid of that variable then.
Job security for people like us who got burned by it. Now we get to be experts.
Sequence is still part of SQL Server, right? They didn't yank that, did they?
Yep.
No.
As of 2012.
Because that had issues, I remember that. But I never hear about anyone actually using it, so I wondered if maybe they'd even pulled it, but nope.
Speaking of you, Doug, Greg has not seen your new video.
Oh! It just went out the door, so don't feel bad.
Yes, if you go to brentozar.com and click training up at the top, why don't you talk about what your new class is about?
Yeah, so it's this one is on statistics, in particular how SQL Server makes guesses about the number of rows that are going to be involved in an operation and an execution plan. So I talk about single column stats, multi-column stats, multiple single column stats, ascending key problems, filtered stats, all kind of stuff like that, that if you're wondering how SQL Server comes up with some of the oddball guesses that it comes up with, there's answers there. There's also stuff on, I think cardinality estimator is in that one too, right?
Yep.
So differences between the 2012 and 2014 cardinality estimator are included too, so you get a better idea of why some guesses are different between the old and the new.
It's super dense. Like everybody's going to learn something out of that. It's a 90-minute series of classes, and I guarantee everyone is going to learn something out of that. Everybody on the team did. It was really good.
Is it as entertaining as Level Up?
Not as many costumes.
Yeah, it's entertaining. There's more stuff following that theme that's going to be coming. It has sort of a game show theme, but you don't see as much of it in this particular video.
Gotcha. All right. Question from JH. He says, for a table level restore on a huge database, which there's no temporary server to restore the database, would file group restore be the only way? And do you think SQL Server will ever support table level restores?
I'm going to show you my age or how long I've been using SQL Server, but SQL Server 6.5 used to have table level restores. I'm not too sure. Yeah, I'm not too sure why they pulled it out, or if it was just tricky to do, but yeah, 6.5 used to have it.
I didn't know that. Wonder why they yanked it. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, doesn't is it Lightspeed that does table restores?
All of them
yeah, all of them do. Yeah.
Do they? Okay.
And they're so cheap. I mean, so Dell Lightspeed, Redgate SQL Backup, Idera SQL Safe, they're all like between $500 and $1,500. I said leave it to a consultant to call that so cheap, but compared to SQL Server licensing, it's really, really cheap.
Per server.
Per server, yeah. And so then that way it just restores the individual table out so much faster, especially faster than shuffling stuff around. Second part, do we think SQL Server is ever going to offer it? I had this thought that SQL Server was kind of dying on the vine there for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden it's like SQL Server, Microsoft woke up and went, oh my God, there's a lot of money here. We should keep developing this. And they've been adding all kinds of stuff that, like the one Eric just wrote a blog post about, compressing encrypted data. I was like, what? They're actually doing that? That's amazing. So it's definitely possible.
Speaking of blog posts, I saw that we renamed SP Ask Brent.
Yes.
I was
get that Brent out of here. Get it out.
Yeah. I was just looking through the blog post, and I saw that we asked the community what the new name should be.
Yeah. Wow, we got a lot of. What was you guys' favorite entry? So we renamed SP Ask Brent to make it open source because we wanted it to have a less Brenty name, just more community-ish name. So you guys who'd looked through the answers, what were your favorite suggestions over there?
Well, Blitz now,
Yeah.
of course, since that was my. But if the Blitzy Blitzy face or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That was good.
I liked
That
Blitz
was excellent.
Perf.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a big fan of Blitz now too, just because you're answering the question, what's going on with my server right now?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, there were so many good answers. Blitzy McBlitzface was one of my favorites as well.
Nothing offensive came out of that, though, huh?
Well, a lot of offensive things.
Yeah. Wasn't there SP Blitz WTF and?
Yes, yes. So many offensive things. I'm proud of our readers. They did not let us down.
All right, question from Samuel. He says, in what scenarios would you have multiple SQL instances on one server? In the era where individual VMs can be spun up easily, I'm struggling to argue for a case for them.
Good.
Good, yeah. Don't argue the case. Argue against them.
Instance stacking can lead to problems because you want to know how much of your resources are being consumed by SQL Server, and if you've got multiple servers on there, when you query one instance, it only knows about itself. It doesn't know about any other instance. And so if you're asking, well, how much memory are you using up? How busy are you keeping the CPUs? You're only getting part of the picture. So that's the big problem that I see with instance stacking, is that it makes it really difficult to troubleshoot. Okay, if I'm starved for resources, where is that coming from? You have to examine all the instances on that server, and it's just so much easier to only have the one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind it in a non-production environment where maybe you need to support multiple versions on the host, but production, don't instance stack.
Someone's claiming it's cost effective, but it's not really cost effective if you already have the VMs, right? I mean, I guess you might. I'm like, it's not you still have to license both instances if you put them on the same box, right?
No, so this is kind of tricky. So I want to say you get up to 49 instances if you do instance stacking. I can't remember if it's 49 or 50. So you could do standard and then instance stack like crazy, but come on now,
That's really bad. But I was trying to figure out what cost effectiveness they thought they meant, and so maybe that's it. They want 49 instances stacked.
So, and we won't use your name, the person who suggested that, but we will say this: there's never been a better time to look for a job. It's a great time in the DBA market. If your company's under that much pressure, it's probably time to go check, because they're probably also not sending you to training classes or to conferences.
Which is why you're here for the free office hours.
Yes, that's probably true.
All right, this is an interesting one from Wes. He says, I need to create a table that contains every country in the world. It needs to have all 3-letter abbreviations of the countries as well as the name of the country. What is the best way to go about getting the names and abbreviations without having to manually type them all out?
I would actually just post the question on Stack Exchange, and I'm sure someone already has a table like this, and they could get you the data.
There's also, I can't remember the name of it. It's that data service. You can just go through Excel.
Melissa Data?
Is it Melissa? Well, they used to have a different name.
One of them, but they're kind of pricey. But
yeah, but there's something where Marketplace. You can go through the Marketplace, and you can actually purchase a data set of something like that. And I don't think they're that expensive, especially for what you're talking about. That's not going to be, millions of rows. It's going to be like 200 or something. So, there might actually be something in the it used to be like Azure DB Marketplace or something crazy like that. It was an Excel plugin though that was built in. You could just click on it and go explore.
yeah, I'd also check out the USPS, United States Postal Service. They have some data sets that are out there. Some of them purchase, so maybe they've got something out there for you.
I'm so bad. So here's what I'm going to do: is I'm going to go Google for a list of countries somewhere, like either Wikipedia is going to have one or USPS, something like that. They're going to give it to you in either a comma delimited format or an Excel file, and then I'm just going to put in additional comments that say, or columns that say insert into : so that I can then copy all of that, paste it into SSMS, and I'm done. Or I would go to open source. So like there's a ton of projects out on GitHub that have drop-down lists for countries, and they'll have inserts into a table that does the same thing. WooCommerce is one of the ones that I use a lot. And most insert statements are going to be not database specific, so you can cannibalize from there.
Looks like people are answering that in the questions with the links.
Oh, nice.
And one of them said Wikipedia. That's why I laughed. It showed up right as you were talking about it.
Can any of the attendees see the links?
Nope.
Yeah, they can.
We'll keep them secret.
Oh, yeah.
We will keep the links to ourselves. Thank you.
I sent the Wikipedia one out to everyone, so now you can
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. All right. Question from Graham Logan. He says, transaction count in master and user databases consistently over 200 transactions per second. Database is only 4 megabytes, but log is 180 megabytes. Long-running queries in either databases, no long-running queries in either databases, open transactions, blocking issues, or temp DB growth. Awaiting response from vendor regarding crazy transaction count. What could be causing this high transaction count, crappy queries executed by the vendor application?
What are you trying to solve here? So transaction count isn't something that I normally monitor anyway. It can be wildly much higher than, say, batch requests per second. Just because a database is small doesn't mean that it's not being used. And if you're looking at the master database, I think that that's going to show all system stuff. So you're going to want to look at this at just the user database. And if you don't think that there's much activity, just run a trace or an extended event to see what kind of activity there is. But I wouldn't recommend using transaction count for anything really. I don't know why it's useful.
I love a 10-second trace, and you'll know the answer right away.
Yeah.
It could be IntelliSense, it could be your monitoring software. And 200 batch requests or 200 transactions a second isn't a big number.
No.
In our training classes, we talk through, like, you can do up to 1,000 batch requests a second really easy on commodity hardware. I wouldn't really freak out until I'm in the thousands of batch requests a second. Even then, I don't freak out. It's just, 200 isn't that big of a deal. You asked an interesting question, why is my data file 4 megs and my log file 180 megs? I'd wonder if you're running log backups. And then I'd wonder how often you're running them, too.
All right, here's an easy one, I think. It's from Samuel. Is it best practice to enable lock pages in memory in SQL 2012 or above?
Yes.
And then why?
I don't have the why. I don't remember it. it's part of the document that we had at various jobs to say enable this when you're setting up a server. You just do it on every single server.
It's one of the great debates in the SQL Server community. Some people say yes, some people say no. If that's your biggest problem, you're in really good shape. Generally, I'm like, I don't want to change something unless I'm solving a problem, but I don't have a problem with people setting that either.
Well, what about as standard practice on a new server, though?
So I don't because, and Cahias and I had this big debate about it, and he wrote this glorious, Jonathan Cahias of SQL Skills, writes this big, glorious long post explaining all the reasons why you should do it. And he even references me in there. He's like, Brent says this, and then I say this, and here's why. Glorious long post, all kinds of details. The first comment somebody leaves is, what happens if this happens, this particular scenario? Cahias responds back, and he says, well, a few things can happen, one of which is Windows may crash due to an out-of-memory error. So I'm like, just generally speaking, I don't like enabling something by default that causes blue screens of death. I love Cahias, good friend of mine. This is just one of those personal things where, when in doubt, I'm going to err on the side away from blue screens of death.
Was that an edge case? It sounds like an edge case. I mean, like
it's
really rare.
Well, it's when, for example, people don't set max memory on SQL Server. It goes and takes a huge majority, and then some application starts to use some, and Windows can't hard trim fast enough. Windows will try to hard trim SQL Server, not be able to, and then you'll get the crash due to out of memory.
Gotcha. So when I refer to documentation, that document would have said, set max server memory. So you've got this whole list of things that you have to do when you're setting up a new server.
Yeah. And I don't. If people want to set it, I'm cool with it. I'm just saying this is why I usually encourage people to do it, because you've seen what, just everyone close your ears for a second. You've seen what kind of servers our clients have. Good God, they're cesspool sewers. All right,
Yeah.
people, you can listen again now.
I mean, I check for that in triage, but I've never recommended it. It's like I would rather recommend instant file initialization before lock pages in memory. And same thing, at my last place, we had a standard where it was in the GPO where it was just automatically granted to the SQL permissions, that and IFI. But I don't think it's as important to be the first thing to look for.
Mm-hmm. All right. Question from Abiola. They say, I have a database that has multiple data files, but one of the data files has grown larger than the other data files. How do I rebalance or redistribute data across other files or this database, for this database?
No one jumped up. I thought everyone would jump up.
Well, I would start by checking your file growth settings to make sure that they're growing the same amount so that you don't run into this for future. But as for fixing it, I just send everybody to the link that's like very long and scary. So defer to the experts.
Yeah, once you assuming that one is where you're going to future grow to, grow the rest of the files to match it, then you can rebuild indexes and it'll balance the load across all of them. It won't be perfect, it'll just kind of round robin allocate. Proportional fill is the word I'm looking for. It's going to proportional fill according to who has the most empty space. Once those other files have empty space, they'll get used and hammered.
I would wonder about how these data files are, what's inside the data files. Is it a file group that has certain objects in it, and that file group doesn't have the multiple data files? I would take a look at your file groups as well.
I like that.
Right. Another question from JH. What are the first things you look for when query tuning an optimizer, and does the largest cost percentage usually a place to focus on, or is it not necessarily so?
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the bigger question is what hurts. If you're doing the query tuning, start with the ones that are causing people agony as opposed to the most expensive ones, because a lot of times, if you look like using SP Blitz Cache, for example, you'll see really high-cost queries, and they will have executed once, and it was maybe overnight, and nobody saw it. So start with what hurts the most, what people are complaining about, and then from there you can look at queries that have a higher cost, and maybe you just want to tune them up to make a process faster that's running in other processes or something like that.
All right. Dan
when
has
you find a query, when you find a query that does suck, the other thing is you might be looking at which percentage or which items in the operators in the plan cost the highest percentage. You got to know that those are the estimates, not the actuals. So when you see a really high cost percentage, that doesn't mean that's the thing that's actually costing the most in the plan. SQL Server's estimates could be wrong. We actually talk about that in more detail in our performance tuning classes, which is funny because I'm giving one as soon as I step out of here. We're talking about this exact instance. If you go to brentozar.com/go/tune queries, you'll be able to see a video of me in Copenhagen talking through this exact scenario.
All right. Andrew just migrated SQL 2008 R2, their QA server, from a Windows 2008 R2 server to a Windows 2012 R2 server. He just did a bunch of migrating. Now, whenever the SQL Engine service is restarted, there is one database that keeps coming up in recovery. To resolve it, I put the database in single user mode, then multi-user mode. Then it comes up fairly quickly. Any ideas what could cause this issue?
I don't know how switching it from single user mode to multi-user mode would have fixed it, but it sounds like you have a VLF issue. So when you start SQL Server, databases go through crash recovery, rolling forward, rolling back transactions, and if you have a lot of VLFs, that could take a long time. I had a production database take 45 minutes to complete crash recovery because of the number of VLFs. This was many, many years ago, and I didn't know about VLFs back then, but this is how I learned about VLFs because this was a mission critical. It had huge SLAs, and it was bad. So I would run dbcc space log _ info, open paren, close paren inside that database, and whatever the row count returns, that's how many VLFs you have on there. And if it's really high, thousands, I'm pretty sure it was a VLF issue, but I don't know that you could resolve it by doing single user mode to multi-user. That doesn't even make sense.
Have you checked it for corruption?
Oh God, that's horrible. And run SP Blitz. SP Blitz will tell you if a database has too many VLFs, and it'll also give you more info, a link as well. I like that answer though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, let's take one more from Dan. Did we take this? No. Dan with a temp log question. We're experiencing high latency reads above 59 milliseconds on tempdb templog.ldf. Is this something to be concerned about?
59 milliseconds isn't that far off from what your optimal value should be.
And it's reads. It's not even writes. That's if you're reading from tempdb, like I'd be like, hey, what are you doing reading from tempdb? So let's start tuning the queries that are putting stuff into tempdb. That's a good. Start at wait stats. Start at wait stats. Run SP Blitz first. See, I almost said SP Blitz now. That's how good you guys is working. Run SP Blitz first, and it'll tell you what the emergency performance problems are on the SQL Server right now. If tempdb's latency is the biggest deal, that'll tell you, but otherwise it'll tell you which wait stats are big, and then go focus your tuning there.
I guess we'll take one more. How about that?
All right, one more, and then I got to go get food before my class starts.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So James asks, should the allocation unit size be formatted to 64 kilobytes for data, logs, and tempdb drives?
Are you on a SAN? Yes or no? If you're on a SAN, they might have their own recommendations for that. A lot of SAN firmware is smart enough to just say, just stick with the default 4096 and we'll handle it from there. If you're on physical storage, the recommendation is, or I should say local physical storage, then the recommendation is, 64K. That hasn't changed, guys, has it?
Nope, no, and it's still in our setup guide. We find there's less people who are noticing a difference as you switch to 64K. There's some controversy about, hey, does it really matter that much? But so we were still waiting to see. That's one of the things I want to test at DBA days, actually. Dell DBA days coming up.
We had it as the standard as part of our GPO as well, last few jobs, and I would always, on a server that I did not set up, I would check to see what it was, because some people would forget to do this step. Did it make a difference? I don't know. Just make sure that you're not setting it like on the C drive, a place where you have smaller files. You want this only on your database files. So you want separate mount points or separate drives for these files in order to set this.
All right, Brent, go get some food.
Woohoo! Thanks, everybody. See you
Thanks,
guys
guys.
next week. Adios.
Thanks.